Hello, welcome to the Citrus Garden. If you're new here, my name is Christina. If you're not new here, hi, welcome back. It's good to see you. This is a reading for the Twin Flame Union. It is meant to be for both counterparts, but also for you to be in union with yourself so that your masculine and feminine energies within yourself are harmonized and in union. So we're going to get started. This reading here, we're starting off, there's like this one energy that, so for the bottom of the deck, I see this as sort of being at the context of the reading. And the first card at the bottom of the deck for each deck that I'm using is a very similar energy. So we have the Nine of Swords, the Devil, and this crocodile energy. So it's kind of like this energy is almost like a dominant energy. It's causing whatever this devil energy crocodile thing is, it just feels like a problem, right? Like a big problem or something like that that's causing a lot of anxiety. And it's kind of like it's the focus. It's the main focus for the connection right now. So both twins may be dealing with their own independent or individual issues, perhaps, right? There may be like this core thing that's needing to be looked at or needing to be dealt with because it's causing anxiety. And I feel like there is something on both sides is kind of how I'm feeling this. With the crocodile, I see this as being sort of an energy that's lying in wait, right? It's kind of like the more that you ignore it or the more that you don't pay attention to it, the more it has the potential to cause anxiety is kind of how this is feeling. But what's so interesting that like besides the like underneath these cards, there's all of this really lovely energy. So you have here the Hierophant and the Seven of Wands, which is talking about like this Hierophant talks about sort of like your higher self almost, or like your guides, however you want to phrase that, is kind of like from a higher perspective, right? Almost like laughing in delight, which is such a difficult, it doesn't, because it feels like whatever the situation feels very difficult, right? And so it's kind of like this one's here is almost like saying that it's all going to be okay, that right now there's kind of a lot of energetic things that are going on that may feel like a lot of pressure or a lot of difficulty or anxiety, but it's kind of like with the Ten of Cups and the Chariot, it's like there is harmony and love and satisfaction and like happiness and freedom from whatever this thing is that is arriving, right? It's arriving. And I feel like for you, if you're watching this, there may just be like this desire to seek out something new is kind of how this is feeling. Like to like with the unicorn, the hummingbird, the snake, this is all about protection. It feels like protection of your energy, right? Protecting your energy with the Empress and the Ace of Wands, trying to seek out, like it seems like trying to seek a solution, right? Trying to find a solution to this problem, whatever it is. Perhaps going or like exploring options or it's like like looking for or seeking specifically for some sort of like divine intervention or something like that that's going to help alleviate whatever this issue or problem is. So that's the overall context of the reading. And we're starting off here just to emphasize, just to drive that point home. We have the fire ant and the hyena, which are both this is the problem, right? This is the issue. With a fire ant, it's that energy of like, it's kind of like the more it's a problem you can't ignore. Actually, it's becoming a problem that like you can't ignore it. You can't. But perhaps with the hyena, it's like you're trying to, perhaps like you're trying to not look at it, but the more that you look at it, or the more that you don't look at it, the more irritating or aggravated it becomes, is kind of how I'm feeling this. And especially with the hyena, with the sort of half moon there. And it was being clarified by these two cards. The despair, the 10 of swords, and the 7 of swords, deception, right? So the deception is the hyena. I want to say it's more so, rather than like deception or lying or anything like that, it's not, doesn't feel like that. It feels more like trying not to see the problem, or if it's like the 10 of swords, the despair, it's kind of just like, with the hyena, I see this as being sort of like using laughter, for example, to cover up something that's not funny, or that's not like, it's trying to mask perhaps the seriousness of it, or something like that, right? It's kind of just like there's a reluctance to sort of address the problem, is kind of how this is feeling. And it's kind of like the reason for that, right? Like because the 10 of swords, it's very difficult. It's a very heavy energy, and it's coming in very much with like the moon. The moon, which of course is like illusions. It could be fear. It could be not seeing the next step, that kind of thing. Which is why there's sort of a solution trying to be found. But I feel like for here, the guidance is, it feels kind of difficult to say this even. Like with the Queen of Cups, 7 of Pentacles, and the Ace of Cups, I feel like this is the guidance, because you have here the Death rebirth card after this. So it's kind of like, in order to get through this issue, the solution is kind of just like to continue to put love into the situation. With the Queen of Cups, right? It's bringing all of this emotional energy into it, but also this one specifically talks to me about surrendering, right? Like it's like you've put your intention out there, and I feel like the guidance is to just, it's kind of like it's out of your, it's not, there's something arriving, right? It's kind of like the solution is being prepared for you, is kind of how this feels like. And it's kind of just like with the 7 of Pentacles, to be patient and like keep your eye on the manifestation, but it's also kind of like, it's not time to act yet. All of these are very sort of patiently withstanding whatever the issue is in order to clear it. With all of this sort of water, it's coming through with like clearing out space or cleansing whatever this fire ant is. Sometimes I see this as a wound, right? Like if there's been any sort of wounding, you have to clean it out in order to prevent infection, like that. It's that kind of energy. So it's kind of like this period right now is in order to clean out some sort of wounding. And it's kind of like you can't do anything with this yet until that wound has been cleansed. And I feel like this, the hyena is coming in almost as like a defense mechanism, right? There's some sort of, again, the deception is here in order for, it's a protective defense mechanism, is kind of how this is feeling. And so it's kind of like you may not be drawing attention to this aspect in order for like self-protection, right? Like cast, like putting that wounded whatever thing is in a cast so that it has time to heal, is kind of how I'm reading this. And there will be some sort of death rebirth cycle, right? It's like being brought through this portal, but a significant ending. And I feel like there is, like after that, there is the Ace of Swords, right? Which is clarity. It's talking about clarity and illumination. And so I feel like there is this sort of trickiness around, but it's kind of like after this transition happens, whatever that is, there's going to be clarity. And what's so interesting here is that the next cards after this are the dragonfly and the whale. So this dragonfly card to me represents, it feels like it's representing the connection today, but it's more than that. It's also kind of like a lot of spiritual support and also like signs and synchronicities, because so it feels like guidance and like spirit coming in to support you in whatever this issue is, especially with the whale. This card is so interesting because how it was coming through today was almost like, because in comparison to the fire ant, right? If you just like think about the scale of these two animals, the fire ant, which today is coming through as a big problem, but the whale is a massive animal. It's a big solution to a big problem. And what's interesting about the whale is that it was coming through today as almost like an airplane. If you think about the size of an airplane and how fast it can travel and at far distances as well. And so that's the energy that's coming through the whale, where it's like, it's whatever the solution is, it's traveling very quickly over a very large distance to arrive into to solve the problem. But if you're standing on the ground looking up at an airplane in the sky, it almost appears, because it's so far away, the distance, the scale of it, you can't necessarily see how fast it's moving, if that makes sense. It appears to be moving slowly because it's at a distance, or because you're so narrowly focused on whatever this like problem is, if that makes sense. But it's kind of like, this is a really big solution. It is arriving very quickly, but because it's like you're focused on here, like your scale, your vision, perhaps your focus is on this like small problem, is kind of how I'm gonna put it, because it does feel, in relation to the whale, this problem feels very small. And so it's kind of like the solution is arriving. It is arriving, but it appears to be moving slowly just because the scale is much different, if that makes sense. I don't know exactly what that means, like, energetically, but I feel like it's like, whatever your problem is, whatever it is that you're dealing with, the solution is much, much bigger than you can expect, because your focus is too narrow, if that makes sense. Anyways, so there is going to be this sort of solution arriving, but I feel like it's just wanting to clear up some other energies where it's kind of like, especially with the hyena, right? It's like, why mask this aspect? And I feel like, again, because I feel like this is happening on both sides, in both counterparts, that there's something that you perhaps are not wanting to share with the other person, which is causing this hyena energy, right? It's like there's something that you may be dealing with independently that you're not wanting to share with the other person, but they may already be sort of aware of it, is kind of how I'm seeing it with this dragonfly. Because this talks to me about like a very spiritual connection, and because of that sort of connection, you do receive signs and synchronicities about what that person is going through, or what they may be thinking about, or something like that. And so it's kind of like, even though there's this sort of attempt to mask the issue or what it is that they're going through, the other person knows or has an idea of what that may be, is kind of how this is feeling, right? Like there is an awareness on the other side of what the other person is going through on some level, right? It may not be conscious as well, especially with the whale. It may not be a conscious awareness, but on some level there is sort of like an understanding about what the other person may be going through. And it may also be that the other person is attempting to make some sort of like solution, or like provide clarity or something like that. I feel like part of the hyena energy as well is coming through with this 5 of Cups, because with the sort of the back turned, and it says disappointment here. It's like there may be a fear of disappointment, a fear of disappointing the other because of whatever this problem is. Perhaps, because it's kind of like, it's with the King of Wands leadership, it's kind of like maybe there was a mistake made, or if it's not, it kind of feels like a mistake or some sort of error from the past that is now causing a big problem, is how I'm seeing it. And so it's kind of like there's this energy of like disappointment, right? Like perhaps like fearing the other person's response, or fearing some sort of I don't know, like or this Five of Cups is, it's feeling kind of like loss or grief, or like having made a mistake, for example, something like that. And it's kind of like not wanting to perhaps face the other, it's just there's a difficulty, right? It's having to admit a mistake is kind of how this is feeling. But there is good news here, is that I feel like that's kind of an energy with the Six of Swords coming out next. This to me always talks about like cutting your losses, right? Cutting the losses and moving on from it. It's like because it's kind of like those thoughts or whatever it is, are the things that hold you back, right? So if there has been some sort of loss or some sort of mistake made, I feel like there is almost like a self-forgiveness that needs to come in there, especially because you have the Star, right? So I'm seeing this as being like the same figure, but from like without the back turned. So it's kind of like perhaps self-forgiveness, right, is the first step, like forgiving yourself for whatever mistake was made. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone has like lapses in judgment. Absolutely. No one's perfect. And I feel like there's an energy here of like forgiving yourself for making mistakes. That's how you learn. And I feel like there's something here about that, right? Like letting go of the lesson, so to speak, integrating it, and then moving forward. And that's what brings this sort of healing and hope. And then you have here the Princess of Discs, manifestation, and then the Ten of Cups. So you actually have the Ten of Cups twice in this reading, which is talking about harmony, emotional fulfillment, but it is more so bringing in this energy of like togetherness and healing, right? It's kind of it's bringing in forgiveness is kind of how this is feeling. That's what the Whale is. That with all of this sort of watery energy coming in, and with the manifestation, it's like I feel like there is a solution coming. There's some sort of coming together or healing of whatever this wound is, but it does take sort of this acknowledgement, perhaps, or admitting of a mistake that was made, maybe. And I feel like with the Fortune, the High Priestess, Fortune and the High Priestess, I feel like this is talking about that's when the wheel starts to turn, right? That's when the solution arrives, right? It's like, it's kind of, I feel like the High Priestess is talking about the solution, understanding what it is you need to do in order to move forward. With this case, I feel like there is, but it's kind of like there is this kind of energy of having to release whatever that guilt, maybe. If there's guilt present, like having to release that and like forgive yourself for whatever the mistake was that was made. And it's like all of this really gorgeous healing energy is coming into remind you that everybody makes mistakes, right? There's not a single person in this world who has never made a mistake, right? That's impossible, in my opinion. And so I feel like there's all of this energy just coming in to remind you about that. So I'm gonna leave the reading there. I'm gonna move to the extended. We're gonna talk about what else you may need to know about the situation. If you're interested in that, the link for that is in the description box. If this message resonated with you, please consider subscribing, liking, or leaving a comment. Thank you so much for sharing your energy with me, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.